Here we are. Peace and love. I got my good buddy Darren Housholder here, who is currently working on my new record with me. He just finished up doing I guess, all the guitars pretty much.
Yeah, mostly.
And yeah,
There's always there's always one of those like middle of the night like melodies you sing to me on Instagram Messenger, and I've got to like listen to Jizzy's like scatting and then try to figure out how to put that into a lick.
many a sleepless night has been had on this last record. No, actually, I think it's gone really good. I think it's gone better than the last two records as far as us being able to communicate and work together. And I mean, you've written a lot of good parts for this record, more so than I think than the last record. And so it's been pretty good.
We've gotten into like the flow of how this goes, where you have written and played the guitar tracks. I decipher and learn the parts, and then I play them, how I would play them, and then you have the little in between the the vocal lines and
The
solo.
ins and outs.
Yeah, the ins and outs. Yeah, um, and it's definitely gotten a lot better since the first record.
Well, a lot. I said a lot more. We were able to communicate a lot better, I think, as far as what the song needs, and you have a better understanding of what the song needs.
Well, I mean, you definitely have you have like a system, a formula of like, for example, like in the second verse, not the first verse, playing little melody lines between the vocal. And
Hmm.
I was telling you, like you're this rock singer who's like a blues guy. Like you sing in you scat pentatonic licks, you know.
My whole life has been the blues.
but but classic, like you have like these great lines that you sing in scat that are like very like for any blues and especially guitar lends itself perfectly. So I
Well,
can
you
pick
know
up.
what, dude? That's kind of like growing up with Led Zeppelin. A lot of the Led Zeppelin stuff is blues based. A lot of rock is blues based, and so I'm just sort of emulating what I grew up with. You know, the Who and Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith.
Yeah.
You know,
This,
and all the legendary guys. So you are from Pittsburgh.
yeah. So funny story how I ended up in California. So I grew up in suburbs of Pittsburgh. I went to Berkeley School of Music in Boston, and I was sending my tapes to Mike Varney, Shrapnel Records, to try and follow along with like. So this is in the '80s, man. So I went to Berkeley from '84 to '88. So at that time, Yngwie Malmsteen and Paul Gilbert and Tony McAlpine, all these guys blew up. So I was chasing that. And to make that long story short, he called me up one day with Jeff Pilson on the phone. He was looking for a guitar player after Dokken had broke up in like 1988. And he had Vinny Appice on drums, a guy named Michael Diamond on bass. They had written all these songs and they recorded them with Randy Hansen, the Hendrix guitar player guy.
Right, right, right.
Great demo, great stuff. And I flew out to California and auditioned, and I got the gig. So Diane and I moved here in '89 to join War and Peace, is what it was called.
Okay. And what happened with that? Just kind of nothing.
Well, as the story goes, not every Hollywood story has a great Hollywood ending.
Well,
Um,
most bands, it's hard to keep bands together. So I do remember that name though from that time. I do remember Pilson was doing that band. I didn't know you were in it.
no, Pilson, I mean, at that time, man, those demo tapes, man, he sounded like Chris Cornell, just screaming angry
Hmm.
to the cross. There was a bunch of songs that were just amazing. I mean, really, what happened was we got signed to Charisma Virgin. We selected, United or whatever management that managed Paula Abdul, and this was the plan is to like kind of use that leverage to get radio play, etc. And Charisma Virgin like saw through that. They're like, no, this is not rock management. You guys got to find a new management company. And they dropped us before it was even signed. And then the management couldn't get us another deal.
Hmm.
And I tell you, man, probably the most frustrating thing of it is that we played one gig. We played this obscure place called Club M, like in the other end of the valley, like Chadsworth, like wait, Roscoe,
Okay.
way out in like, where the tumbleweeds actually
Where I used to live, actually. I
used
used to
to,
live in Chatsworth. Yeah.
I used to plumber, I think, way out there in the outskirts. But anyway, we never really like played the Whiskey or Grizzari's, And Vinny Appice was an amazing, icon drummer. Jeff was great. We played just one show, but the show that we played, the entire Lynch Mob band was there. Like George is like one of my heroes, and I'm up on stage playing. My knees were knocking. I'd be lying back,
Okay.
wasn't a little bit starstruck or whatever. But I mean, the way that thing ended is that it just we couldn't get a deal, and then Vinny Appice quit. I got fired, and then he brought in Russ Parrish and
Okay. Okay.
new drummer, new bass player,
For
everything.
for people that don't know, Russ plays in Steel Panther. He's the guitar player. I don't know what his nom de plume is in
Great,
that
great.
band, but
Yes,
but
yes.
he's a great guitar player.
He's one of the great rock guitarists alive.
Right, right, right.
He's just the greatest. And I went on to record a record for Shrapnel Records. So that was in 1992. So all the stuff I had been writing and trying to be like, not trying to be the next Ingve, but like I was more like a blues, funky rock guy. Stevie Ray, Hendrix, Van Halen, obviously, and of course some Steve Vai and all those guys thrown in. But so I recorded my first Shrapnel record, and then I was like, I kind of have to tell this story. So I wanted to get into a band, and so the summer of '92, Diane and I went back to Pennsylvania, bought a car. We drove the convertible to California. I had 3 cassette tapes. One of them had "Wasted in America" on one side and like "Blue Murder" on the other, right? One of them had the Chili Peppers on one side and something. So I'm listening to "Love Hate," "Wasted in America," like I don't know, 3 times a day for like 3 days driving out west.
Sounds like torture.
You know, I loved it. And it was like because like the Chili Peppers vibe. Love Hate was this rock band with this like funkiness that I mean, the funny thing is that I really wasn't familiar with Blackout, although that's like the big iconic record. What I
Mhm.
was really drawn to songs like Spit. I love that stuff, and I love the band, and it was literally like a couple months later, one of the guys I was teaching guitar lessons to said, "Hey, my roommate's getting a gig in Love Hate, and you're better than him. You should go down there and audition." Just like that, I go, "Get me the number."
Mhm.
I called. I don't know if it was you. I think it was Skid. So I went down. I didn't learn any of the songs. We just jammed. It went well. I knew that it went well because you actually helped me carry the amp out to the car, which like singers don't carry guitar amps ever.
Well, what happened was Skid had his eye set on this one guy, and Joey and I didn't really like him. We weren't 100% committed to anybody. And we saw a lot of guys come in for the auditions, and most of them, I mean, some of them were okay, but some of them were just, insulting. It just, we actually were a good band, and you don't have your shit together and you're wasting our time. You know what I mean? But
No,
anyway, you came in and you just had a cool look and you didn't look like you were, too nervous, and you know what I mean? You had confidence. And I just thought, okay, this surfer dude, he's all right.
we were just kind of rhythm and grooving and just kind of rocking. Like it went by quick, and Skid was calling me to come back, and then and then we're all in this circle, and he says to me, he goes, "Hey, Darren, you think you could wear your guitar a little bit lower?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." He's like, "You're in." Everyone's like, "You're in," and I'm like, "Okay." Um, and
That's
then
funny.
like, look, the shred guitar player guy is like, I wear my guitar down here now, but like at the time, it's probably up a little bit.
Yeah, you look like one of the Archies. Sure.
Like, uh,
Hey, it's a transition, man. It's a transition because when you joined the band, our other guitar player quit or was fired, you know what I mean, depending on who you spoke to. And we didn't know how to audition people. We didn't know how to have people in bands. You know what I mean? Some bands have a lot of members, LA Guns, a lot of members, but we
yeah,
never changed members. So it was weird probably for you and for us. at the time, just because it was such a tight tribe. Like when I joined, I moved in. Well, now that you've joined the band, you have to move in with us. And I was just, I didn't get it. I strapped my bed to the top of Joey's Ford Bronco, and he drove my bed over to this empty loft. I just, you know what I mean? It was unusual, unorthodox to me. I didn't realize that that's how real bands work, is that they become a tribe.
You guys were a family. You were definitely a tribe, and the teepee was Hell, California. It
Yeah, yeah,
was like sort
that
of dorm rooms, if you will, closet rooms, and
that
then
shitty loft.
that open space rehearsal where we would rehearse on the one side. It had a wall of mirrors, and on the other side is where we had the setup to record. It
Yeah.
was a
No, it
fact.
was for a rock band that was working and making music, and it was definitely the best vehicle for that, because it was like a factory, as you say. It was
Yeah.
like a factory to make music for a working rock band. And it worked for a long, long time until it didn't, you know what I mean? Times change, people change, and the band wasn't the most important thing in the world anymore, and people moved on, and
You
that's just
guys,
how
you guys
shit is.
were there, and you guys got the deal, and everyone got a new car and a nice apartment, and so that's when I joined you guys. I mean, really,
You joined in 92.
yeah. And you guys had just been dropped, and
Yeah, we had just lost our
you
deal, but then
guys.
we got another deal with EMI for Let's Rumble, and we started working on Let's Rumble. Darren played guitars on our third record, Let's Rumble.
What we did was we played shows right away, and
Uh-huh.
me, like I'd been like, I'd played in like cover bands and done tours with like a top 40 cover band. We play 5 nights a week for months, go in a Ford Econoline van down to the other side of the country, playing 5 nights in a hotel, go to the next hotel, done that, right? But for me, this is like my first really like original rock band. And you guys were very seasoned, like great stage performance, like real rock guys. And I was like this cover guy, really, that I mean, honestly, like I was really wet behind the ears and green, and you guys taught me how like a rock band, how to perform and how to be. Because I thought I knew it, but until you do it, you don't. Until you have that experience, and you guys gave me that experience. But the point was is that we played right away. We played an after hours show at like 3 in the morning,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Remember
It's all coming back to me.
and then we just played and played and played. So by the time we came to record, we had played so much, and that was incredible. And that's really what I was. I was in a room like recording with my guitar and teaching guitar lessons for 12 hours a day. I wanted to play so bad, you know.
Well, and then we did the record. We went out on the road for a while. This was 1992, 93, and this brand of music was not on, you know what I mean, in the top 10 of everyone's
Uh,
playlist.
Never
You know,
mind came
it
out,
was
and
Pearl Jam, it was Nirvana, and then Green Day and Korn, and just Sunset Strip rock music was uncool, and you could just, you could feel it, but for guys like me, I was just thinking, I keep my head down. Rock will come back. You know what I mean? Ska will go away. You just persevere. And so that's kind of, my philosophy on that whole thing. So were you in the band for what, 2 years?
so throughout
Three
'93,
years?
we did that tour, and then we went over to the UK in July for
Right.
the release. And that was like, but like the US shows were great, like the limelight and the shows were good. But going over to England was like that's where you're like that's
Well,
rock.
because you didn't realize how, because we were still pretty big back then.
Oh, that was Rockstar. No, we I felt that over there. We were over there for 3 weeks. We did 10 in stores and 10 shows. The in stores had thousands of kids lined up for like 4 or 5 hours signing all this stuff. The shows were great. We went to the BBC and we did a whole recording. I mean, it was amazing. But when we came back, you were writing and recording. Skid was writing and recording. Neither of you guys really wanted anyone else to play on it. You wanted to play the guitar and your stuff, and so did Skid.
Well, it was a weird time. It was a weird time. There were attitudes, and there were egos, and control issues. I guess you were sort of caught in the middle.
I will say this: you were writing your own songs, and I think maybe for the first time, Skid felt threatened because you were a writer, and
Yeah.
you were writing, and you can play the guitar, and you can obviously write and create, and you wanted to record your own stuff. And he was like, "Well, so am I." And you were like, "Well, I just play the guitar on it." And he was like, "So will I." Neither of you guys were sort of like battling, and I was like the odd man out in the middle. I don't know if Joey was playing drums on both of your
He
demos.
was. No,
I was.
he was sort of the mediator. We were, all of us kind of weren't getting along, and it was partly that. It was partly, it's hard to weather the storm when everyone thinks that your music is uncool. You know what I mean? It's different when everyone loves your music, but when you're competing against Pearl Jam and no one digs your music, it makes it even harder, to really forge ahead. And yeah, you're right. There were some control issues and stuff like that, and it eventually did contribute, I think, to the band ending years later.
Yeah, but as I remember it, we got into a thing, July, the tour, August, September. By the time we got to September, October, I was just playing around. Like I had an instrumental guitar record. When we were on the road in '93, I had an 8-track with me, and I wrote a
Mhm.
bunch of music that became like my second shrapnel record. I just want to go out and play. So I was playing FM station with Happen and Harry. Um, I won't say anything other than God bless the guy, right? But
Let me tell the story about when Skid and I went to Warner Brothers.
okay,
That's a good story. Skid and I, we lost our deal with EMI, and so we were trying to get a deal with Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers invited us to their big office in Burbank,
I know the story.
and yeah, and Barry Squire was there, and me and Skid each had a song to pitch to Warner Brothers, and so we're in his office, and he turns on the TV and he goes, well, check this out, Life, Sex, and Death. Alex Kane, the guitar player, just left the band, and they're auditioning guys, and so he just left it on, and he left the office, and everybody was trying out for that gig. I saw John Five was playing guitar; he was auditioning for that gig, and you see Stanley doing his weird homeless shtick in the camera, and all of a sudden we see you on the TV playing, and me and Skid I go, what's going on? And then you go, gee, I hope Jizzy and Skid don't see this. That was one of those
Oh man,
awesome Spinal Tap moments.
it's
That,
like
good story. Um, all right, well let's move on. We've talked about the past. Uh, and in the intervening years, rather, we've done tours together. You went to England with me a couple of times in 2007, 2008, 2009. We kept in touch, blah, blah, blah. And then I got a deal with Frontiers for my record, All You Need Is Soul. And that was sort of when we reconnected, and you played on that record. I guess that was what, 2016 or 17 or something?
2017. We
Yeah.
had I was going to Vegas with Diane for a thing, and I would message you from time to time, and we had a dinner once, where we kind of met up, and you were like, "Hey, we're playing. Do you want to play? You want to play Spinning Wheel?" And
Oh, it vamped.
Doc was on bass, and I think it was a Christian guitar player.
Right.
No, and so I shared the stage and played a couple songs, and we kind of reconnected, and I think it was after that it was kind of like, huh, okay. And then you called and asked me if I would play on your record, and I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah.
And I would drive, and I lived in Vegas, and I would drive out to your house, and I would stay up in the crow's nest, and and then we would go record, and that's when I told the story. I just interviewed Andy, and I told the story about how we were in the studio and that guy was fucking up, and you called Andy in a panic because I was flipping out.
Well, Tim and Andy, both great longtime friends, Pro Tools guys, great guitar players, everything. And for whatever it was, like Tim had more of like a bigger studio. It was close by. So that's the place we chose to go over and record all these guitars. He's got a big room, loud guitars and everything. And then he had to go to Australia with his wife, and so he had this guy come in that just wasn't happening at all. And the look on your face was just like, oh my God, like you. And I'm just like, and I watched the YouTube video. It was funny. I mean, Andy's account, and Andy's like, well, I'm thinking that maybe next week or whatever. And then Darren goes, no, how about in an hour?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Before I go on some fucking shooting spree.
or Jizzy kills this guy. You need to come over here, man.
But anyway, it worked out okay. And Andy worked out great. And I didn't realize Andy had worked with all these people in the past. I didn't realize he was a guy from the record plant and had this huge resume. I mean, he was like AAA. You know what I mean? My car was broken down by the side of the road, and he came and took care of business. But yeah, so we did that first record. There was some not, how do I put it? It was just it was the first time where you and I had worked like face to face. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean it takes, we had to sort of get used to how each other worked. That's one of the things that when you're a solo artist or you're a producer or whatever, you have to, people have to understand how you work and how I work, and don't get defensive. Don't take things personally. You know what I mean? Don't treat people like robots. This is all stuff I said in my video, and I say it to myself, because when I was first working with people, I was like that. Because I didn't know how to, you have to learn how to be a real producer, like a people person when you're not, you know what I mean? When you're just like this intellectual weirdo, you have to learn how to get people to do what you want in a way that makes them want to do it. You know what I mean? And not,
Yeah.
guy's a fucking asshole.
No, I mean, you have to, be a leader without being a dictator.
Yeah.
And we're human, right? We're all, and you kind of, be able to. And I've
Well,
learned,
we ended up getting what we got, and it's a killer record.
it was tough. I mean, for me, it was really a learning curve. For example, solos and licks and things like that. Like you don't just you wing it, but for me, it was the homework. So you wing it at home, and you can spend hours and hours with a little voice memo app on your iPhone.
Yeah.
And then you go back through that notebook of all this stuff, and then you find the bits. And so a solo is not just some improvised, shredding, scalier, thing. You construct it. I mean, you write it. I mean, maybe George Harrison did this stuff on the spot, or like guys like Joe Walsh.
I don't think so.
Joe Walsh or Slash, just like it just comes out of there.
I don't think so. I think most of the really good guitar solos are composed.
Yeah, I would have to say I agree 100%. And then you have a process of just like, when you record it and you listen back and you go on and you come back the next day and you get it just right. But that takes a lot less time now than it did.
Certain songs you got, like that song Frustrated, you played that one immediately because that was in your wheelhouse, that Van Halen Hot for Teacher. I mean, you actually, that was just like one take.
Yeah, changed the riff a little bit. You had something.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit more VH kind of vibe. And you said, explicitly like, shred on this one. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I mean, it's a lot easier to just shred on something than it is to write something that's beginning, middle, and end and full of hooks. I mean, that's really where the craft is, and you hear guys like Angus, and you just like, just how crafty and Slash, how crafty these solos are. And
it's because that's what you have to do. I mean, as a writer, I do the same thing. I mean, I agonize over parts, you know what I mean? And you try and get it as close as you can to how you hear it in your head. And you get 95 or 90%. You never quite get the whole picture, but you got to let it go. You know what I mean? It's like once you have that baby, you got to let the baby walk.
You'll never finish the song. You'll be there and you'll never get to the second song.
Well,
You
that's
have
what
to go,
Sting
you
is
know,
famous for saying that. Sting said the hardest part about making a record is finishing it. And I would tend to agree. So we do All You Need Is Soul, and then we did Hell California, the next record, and we played around with different guitars. You know what I mean? We did the SG and the Les Paul and stuff like that because I wanted to try something more like AC/DC. You know what I
well,
mean?
so the Hell California, this was the COVID record, right? So this
I
was
okay.
rather than you in my house, going to a studio, you and I would do this Zoom thing together, and we would
FaceTime, right?
I,
Yeah.
I would I would play the parts, and you would and you would comment, and I'd work on that, and then I'd go into Andy's studio, and you'd be there like FaceTime, like in the room, virtual,
The Eye
like
of Sauron, right?
like like up in the corner of the room, like staring down at you, and you're.
Yeah, yeah. No pressure.
But yeah, it worked really well, in that you were able to comment along the way, and but that was my first of like, all right, not the this is the guitar I did the Let's Rumble record with, this is the guitar that I've used on like a lot of other stuff, but now I'm using Andy's Les Paul and Andy's SG. I mean, most guitar players, we have like a very real comfortable feel with our guitars, but when you play someone
Mhm.
else's, and then you got two different ones, and those are going to be your left and right rhythms or whatever. That was a real kind of, but it was that I grew to appreciate like those two guitar sounds, what they are.
And how
SG's
and how they sounded when they were combined. They did have a special sound for sure.
SG has so much clarity. I get it when I see guys like Phil X, ripping on an SG, and guys like there's so much clarity on it. It's not just like the Angus solo. There's a lot of clarity, and then Les Paul has that beef and you get those
Hmm.
sounds together. That record was a challenge, and then I was able to use the other guitars for the solos and whatnot. But the whole record was recorded at Andy's house.
The COVID record. I'd forgotten about COVID.
Well, that was great, man, because like the world was shut down.
Yeah.
Like my business was super slow. Like,
Tell people about your business.
yeah, okay, so kind of a long story short, like while I was at music school, I'd sell stuff on the phone, like a lot of us probably did, like had musicians with a phone job. When I moved to California, I was able to, from the Pilsen thing to Love Hate to like teaching guitar lessons and doing stuff for about 10 years. And then when my first son, Dorian, was being born, guitar wasn't making enough money. I went back and started selling stuff on the phone. And then shortly thereafter, I was able to buy a house. I quit my job and I started reselling supplements that what I was selling, like the ginseng shots and supplements, like out of my garage. That was 1998. So then, throughout selling supplements, I've created brands, and the brand Psychopharma, I mean, it took a long time, but it came out in 2017 is right, really when the mind set up this brand and what it is. So my products, being, the rock musician guy, I've got Far Beyond Driven is my fat burner. I've got Crazy Train is my shot.
Who do you sell to specifically?
So psychopharma.com. So we're selling business to consumer. We're on Amazon. We sell to retail stores around the country. But we also in the last year I've been
But
to
isn't it for athletes and
yeah, so Edge of Insanity is a pre-workout powder. Edge of Insanity is you drink the pre-workout powder. It's great when you're recording guitars for 5 hours, I can tell you that. You just kind of my face is a little red because I drank Edge of Insanity. I did a little workout and ate some food before our meeting. But it's heavy caffeine but there's fat burners and there's nootropic and testosterone and energy shot and I'm able to like I got the trademark for Crazy Train for an energy shot. Like that was like I don't know. I was really happy. I don't know about everybody else, but like I had to have that name. And
Sharon Osbourne's lawyer will
well,
contact you shortly.
nothing to do with Randy Rhoads or that riff. But no, I've got Thunderstruck as the testosterone. Edge of Insanity is a Tony McAlpine record from the 80s. Far Beyond Driven, obviously, is Pantera. It's like creating a band or creating an album or creating like an art. Like, I get to choose.
Well, and it's a successful business, man.
It
I
is.
mean, you're doing really good. It's come a long way since when I went to your house in Burbank and you were doing it in the garage.
I've had a pretty clear head the last 11 years.
Yes,
And
wink, wink.
It took a few years when I started getting clear to really for this thing to really start working well, and it takes time. But you know, it's like anything, man. If you stick to it and you don't give up, you will be successful. If you really have it in your head and you believe it, and you just don't give up and you just work at it, like you will get there.
We're going to talk about the new record now. We've talked about the past,
Ah,
present, and now the future of rock and roll. What do you think makes this record different from the other records? I asked Andy, what do you think?
yeah, well, this one I think you told me that it's like a punk vibe and just like just hang with it. Like when you hear the songs, so when you first hear like your demos, it's your kind of scratchy guitars and your vocals and everything, and it's not produced or mixed, right? But I know you well enough. Like I can hear the polished version in my head, right? But you were saying about it being punkish, and I'm just like, dude, I'm not a punk guitar.
I'm not a punk rock guitar player.
I could be a chameleon, but man, like that's just one. Just that it just ain't me. But no, the songs like getting more into it. I got the vibe of what you're saying. I mean, there's a street feel about it, and there's a theme. It does have like this. It's a youthful kind of thing. It's kind of I don't know, man. There's like a certain era. I don't know if it's the late '70s or in the '80s where there's just like it's not '80s music, but there's just like a certain element that you hear from there. It's kind of reminiscent. It's a nice vibe that it's just like a different color theme than you hear on stuff. I hear AC/DC-esque and it just because it's big rock, but with a totally different flavor. It's a fusion of stuff, like
Mhm.
like a fusion restaurant where you go there and
It's
it's like,
nice. It's nice that you get to hear it now because when we were talking about it before, I think Andy had the same first impression when I sent him the songs. I don't think he was going, okay, all right, these songs, okay, you know what I mean? And I was trying to explain to him, no, it's going to sound like the other records. It's just going to have a different, a more raw, looser vibe. You know what I mean? And now that we've assembled it and we got the guitars on it, I think everybody gets it.
yeah. Well, you're labeling it in a way because you can imagine the full thing, and when you say that to us, we're both kind of like, whoa. But ultimately, the music's the music. When you learn it and you dive into it and you kind of add your little bit of elements to it, then you really you get. I get what you were saying. I mean, I don't know. I would call it more like it is the fusion of there's the love hate, dude. It sounds like love hate, but having progressed, and you have like these other flavors you bring in. But it's different than All You Need Is Soul. It's different than Hell California. This is a different like set. But every song has its own character. Like this is not one of these things where like they all sound alike or it's a remake of this. No, each one of these is its own individual like person. Like each song has its
Yeah,
own.
and it really has grown. I mean, when I first started hearing it with the guitars and we were recording it and I was hearing the huge guitars, I was going, okay, okay, vindication, you
Dude,
know what I
over the
mean?
when
I
people
because
hear
I didn't want it to sound thin, you know. I didn't want it to I was kind of throwing out drama rama, suicidal tendencies, punk bands,
you
but
gave me the
I
to
don't want
listen.
to sound like the Germs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't want to sound like Fear. You know what I mean? But I want that attitude. I want that attitude that punk rock bands have of I don't give a
Play with that sarcasm that those guys played it with. Like there was a tongue in cheek and a f you kind of attitude played with. It's
Well,
not.
yeah, because we're all getting older, and I don't want, maybe it's my midlife crisis coming to haunt me. Maybe I don't want to be the ballad guy. I don't want to be Barry Manilow yet. You know what I mean? I'm not ready to be Frankie Valli and with the tuxedo because I am in Vegas.
You are, hey, but you're already playing those casino
It's
rooms.
it's a it's a it's a it's a slippery slope, dude.
You know,
Pretty soon, I'll be singing My Way with a tuxedo and shit. And so maybe this is my personal thing of just, I want to rock. I want to stay rock. And I want people to hear these songs. And I think when they do hear these songs, they're going to jump out of the speaker, and I hope people will appreciate the energy that it's being put in
And
it. And
this is not redoing any rock sound from the past. There's a youthful like injection into these tunes that is that. This is not a bunch of guys that are whatever, however old we are. I mean, this sounds like a bunch of dudes that are 25, 27 years old rocking. That's what this
yeah,
music.
in a garage, just not doing it for Spotify. They're just doing it for the love of rock. It's funny because when I see, like, for example, that song "You're Gonna Burn" is probably one of my favorite songs, and I hear it it starts to magically appear, and it makes me smile. It makes me feel good. I'm doing Quiet Riot and I'm playing the casinos and I'm, taking care of business, but I can still, as Night Ranger says, rock in America. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, you're a great writer, dude. And when people hear "Over the Edge," when they hear that chorus, like I heard the chords, and then I had this little arpeggiating picking part that I came up with, and it's not complex, but it just makes the whole when you get into this chorus and your vocals, like it's just like
Yeah.
in the air, like anthem. It has the "Hey Jude" like anthem kind of vibe to it. It's just like, oh my god. I
Yeah,
mean, this
I
is
mean
great, great
it's
stuff.
pretty huge. It's pretty huge. And we're now just starting to go into the mix portion, which is the fun part. I was listening with Andy on FaceTime a day or two ago, and I'm okaying everything, and I'm just smiling, going, "Okay, that's fine. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good." You know what I mean? I've baked the fucking cake. Now I get to enjoy a bite or two
Yeah.
and not have to stress out about I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Yeah, and it'll be mixed.
I get to eat the cake also, and you brought me into this thing and the demos, doing my little homework day after day, weeks and months kind of go by. You get in there and you're recording, getting some mixes sent to you, and you get to sit there and kind of go, "This is really cool."
Yeah.
You know?
It's good. It's good. I'm happy that this third record is coming out the way it is, and it'll be done this year, and it'll be out next year sometime. I don't know when, but it's great. And
Let me
once
ask you.
again, you've done an outstanding job playing guitar.
Thank
I
you.
think your solos are better on this record than I think they are on the other ones. I think that you challenged yourself a little bit and
More storytelling.
did
It's
more interesting shit. Didn't just go for the speed.
yeah, and that's easy. And when any of us that can when we do that, it's a cop out.
That solo on "Did You Think" is fucking crazy.
And it's just like that the high E string like triplet trill thing, and what it went into. It was just like when you hear it like over the rhythm, it's just like it's like catching a wave. It was just had that thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's some good stuff. "Wrath of Love" is one of my favorites. It's "Over the Edge" has got that. I call it "Tears for Fears." You call it "Hey Jude." That sowing the seeds of love.
yeah.
Yeah, there's some heavy stuff. There's some really interesting stuff. And again, now I get to go into mix mode and I get to enjoy.
I was going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
Well, I guess it's kind of like a statement of just like, man, it would be great to play a show and really feature like Jizzy's music. Like,
Yeah, my
you
solo stuff.
well, you got to play the hits or whatever, but kind of at the encore and so forth. But I mean, to play, Eye for an Eye, which is a bad. Oh my God, we didn't even mention that one. That's a badass tune. But like on all three records now, there's some great songs. And
Mhm.
remember you go see a band and they'd play like half of the new record and then they would play the oldies. And then when they come around a year or two, they play half the new record. And,
Right.
and again, like some of the old, but your fans have not had the opportunity to really hear this stuff like live.
I know. You know what? It's because you don't want to scare people by going too deep into unfamiliar territory. It's just I see it sometimes. I see bands when they go for the deep cuts. And after, you know what I mean? People have short attention spans generally,
Yeah.
and so you want to keep hitting them with the hits, and so you'll give them one song or you'll give them two new songs, you know what I mean? But you don't want to you don't want to press your luck. I
Yeah.
get what you're saying. I mean,
I'll make it
sometimes,
hard. These aren't the B-sides. These are the best songs of the newest records you've done. These
yeah.
aren't B-sides. If this was a major label, not blowing smoke, if this was a major label, these would be like the first and third, whatever singles that would have been pushed. Some of these songs, and for you to go and take three from this record, three from that record, and three, you don't need to play Tumbleweed again. You got to play Blackout in America. You got to play that, right? But you
Mhm.
don't have to necessarily play Spit. You could play Over the Edge.
People would beg to differ with you, but
I love
I get your point. It's just it's a different world with Spotify, and it's a different world with the whole streaming thing. The audience has changed since when you and I used to go to concerts and stuff like that. It's just
buy a
it's
record that
changed. I see it in their eyes when I play Quiet Riot. You know what I mean? I see it in their eyes when I play Love Hate and stuff like that. You see familiarity, and then you see the haze go over their eyes when you play a new song. You know, like the film, the cloud goes over their eyes, and you're just going, "Come on, just stay with me. You're gonna love it."
for me, that's the exciting. I mean, I'm that guy. Like I love music, like Korn, raising Korn, and I go see them. But I want to hear like the record that was like last year, 2 years, 5 years,
Yeah, I
7 years.
know.
Hear the record 30 years ago. I go, you know what, man? I've heard that 10,000 times. But like, I'm a fan of like I have all the records. I have all the music. First,
We're old school. That's the difference. Old school fans have a different relationship with music before the internet, before streaming. Because I'm in it, dude. Every single weekend, I am out there on my stripper pole doing my thing.
yeah, you got to feed them the dope, man. They don't want
Well,
any.
you got to give the people what they want. I mean, Chrissy Hind hates Brass and Pocket, but she's got to play it every single night. She has to, and she knows it. But anyway, let's
Yeah.
close out. We have made another successful record, and it's going to be out next year, 2025. And so, yeah, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have another a little bundle of joy
So let me
under the
ask
Christmas tree.
you, what are you imagining for the title? What
I
thoughts?
have a title. I'm just not going to tell people yet.
Okay.
I have a full title, and I have a cover. I've already made a cover.
Okay.
I'll tell you off camera,
All right.
but I already have it. I don't want to tell people yet because everyone's going to be, oh, that title sucks. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear it. Love Hate fans, Jizzy fans will love this record. And once again, you've done an outstanding job on guitar,
Thanks.
and people are going to dig it.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. It is a challenge. It's not a walk in the park, and it takes it takes months. It takes a lot of little. I've got voice memos like for
All those
months,
goddamn licks, dude. Those
and
goddamn licks.
it's like this is forever. You record that's real, posterity or whatever. This is going on for infinity, and
No,
do your
it
best.
is true though that you can't shit on that. Once you make a record and it's out there, there's no more excuses. I mean, it's got to be 100%.
You have to do your best, and you owe it to yourself and everyone else that ever listens to it to like give it 100%, do your absolute best stuff, and you just keep digging it. That's been amazing. I appreciate you like bringing me in to do this thing and allowing me to do my thing, and it's been great to play your music, but to also put in my own creativity too.
Yeah. It's been a good collaborative situation, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
All right. See ya.